So what we have here is the square root of 2 plus the square root of 18, and they're wanting us to find the expression that's equivalent. So this symbol here, that's called the radical symbol. So when you hear me talk about radicals, that's what I'm talking about, is numbers under that symbol. And so the first thing you need to know, and this is something my students struggle with, is you can't add these together. So I like to think of radicals kind of like a variable. And these are not like terms because this one has a radicand of 2 and this one has a radicand of 18. Radicand is the number inside. So you got the symbol, which is the radical symbol, and then the number is called the radicand. So you cannot add those together. The only time you can add those together is if they have the same number under the radical, which is going to come up here in a second. So let's see, where do we start? The first thing you should do is look to see if you can simplify any of these. And what you want to do is pull out any perfect squares that you can. And so for perfect squares, I always tell my students to write them down. You just take 1 squared, that would be 1. 2 squared would be 4. 3 squared would be 9. 5 squared would be wait, did I do it? 4 squared is 16, sorry. Skipped one. And then 5 squared, and then 6 squared, and 7 squared, and so on. So those are called perfect squares. And so what I want to do is see if I can factor this 18. The 2, all I can do is factor that into 2 and 1, and that's not going to do anything for me. But the 18, I want to see if any of these numbers are factors of 18. And so I want to find the biggest one that is, and that would be 9. So I can break the 18 into 9 times 2. So then what I'll have here is the square root of 2 plus, I'm just going to write this out so you can see exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to make the 18 into 9 times 2. And the reason I did that is because 9 is a perfect square. Square root is asking what number times itself is that number. So the square root of 9 is 3, because 3 times 3 is 9. So then this would simplify to the square root of 2. The square root of 9 is 3, so I can bring that out in front of the radical symbol, and then leaves me with the 2 inside there. So now go back to the beginning, and I said you couldn't add these together because they don't have the same radicand, the same number under the symbol. Now I do have them with the same number, and I can add them together. But let me show you this. This is an easy way to think of it, I think. I said you can think of those as variables, right? So let me rewrite this, and I'm going to, instead of the square root of 2, I'm going to change it to x. So if I had x plus 3x, I could add those together, right? And remember, there's a 1 here, so this would simplify to 4x. The same thing can be done over here with the radical. And so there's a 1 here that's not written. Sorry, I meant to change it back to red. There we go. So there's a 1 that's not written. I add the 1 and the 3 together to get 4, and then I just keep the radical the same, the square root of 2. And that's your simplified answer, so that's D. So it's really important that you don't add these together. Again, back in the initial expression, a lot of my students would have said that's the square root of 20, and you can't do that, okay? You can only add them if they have the same radicand, so the same number under the radical, and then what you add is actually the number outside. You don't add the radicands together. So I didn't add this together and get the square root of 4. I kept the square root of 2. Just like if you had variables here, you would just keep the x. All right. So keep up the good work, and you will master the math.